Hey guys, and welcome back to the only series out there that combines the story of Magic the Gathering with the physical cards you can win. I'm Simon, and this is Friday Night Lore. So on this episode of Friday Night Lore, we're gonna step away from Innistrad for a bit because BFZ is out and in full swing. The older stories are nice, don't get me wrong, but I'm betting there's plenty of new stories and cards from BFZ you're all looking forward to hearing more about. For this week's FNL, we're going to revisit the story of everyone's favorite plunging planeswalker, the mischievous merfolk, Kiora. As we learned in her original story, which you can find here or in the description below, Kiora is a native of Zendikar and thus hopes to protect her homeworld from the destructive Eldrazi. She was on a mission to find the largest sea monsters the multiverse had to offer and use her magic to tame and transport them to Zendikar. Once she found the biggest and baddest beast she could, she would use this army to defeat the Eldrazi. She hit a small snag on the plane of Theros, however, when she came face to face with an actual god, the god of the seas, Thassa. Thassa didn't take kindly to this otherworldly merfolk stealing her leviathans and winning over the faith of her people, so the god decided to teach Kiora a lesson. Unfortunately, the god never tangled with a planeswalker before, and although she probably won the fight, Kiora ultimately won the war as she planeswalked from Theros with the god's mythical weapon in hand. Kiora returned home not with a giant monster, but with the power of a god. Perhaps that would finally be enough to end the Eldrazi. Now on Zendikar, Kiora takes a moment to think on what just happened. She had beaten a god, rather, she escaped from one, but she still toted it as a victory. She thinks back to her people, her world, and the gods they once held dear, and how those gods were now besting them. Her people, the Merfolk of Zendikar, worshipped three gods who held dominion over the world. Emria, creator of the skies and winds, Ula, god of the seas, and Cozy, the trickster god. While most merfolk followed Ula, the proposed creator of the merfolk, others followed the devious Cozy. This cult of tricksters was filled with outcasts, for following Cozy meant nothing but trouble. Soon though, following any god would mean only that, trouble. These false gods were revealed to be the ancient misunderstanding of the Eldrazi titans Emrakul, Kozilek, and Ulamog, the current god of Zendikar. Like a god, Ulamog reigns without question and persecutes without mercy. To the merfolk who once followed these idols, the revelation cursed their entire belief system and left them little to hope for. Kiora never had much love for the gods, save for Cozy, that trickster always made for a good story in her youth. Now, back on Zendikar, Kiora knew the power of a true god and how to beat him. This knowledge would come in handy for the task at hand, killing her people's sea god, the Eldrazi titan Ulamog. As she returned to the familiar shores of Zendikar, Kiora couldn't stop herself from immediately returning to the ocean. The waters of her home world were the perfect remedy for the mud that had covered her during her last encounter on Theros. She was happy to be back. That happiness turned to disappointment when she looked at her prize, the bident of the god from another world. This impressive weapon seemed much less powerful in her world. Perhaps it didn't hold the same strength as it did on Theros. Even so, it made for a good story and at least it was still sharp. As she swam, the waters sang to her, telling Kiora everything that had happened while she was away. She could feel life in the sea. Good. That means the Eldrazi hadn't consumed all of it yet. But she could also feel the still, lifeless waters which had succumbed to the colorless monsters. The sea had wept, and the shores shriveled. Kiora saw this with her own eyes. A barren shore, white, chalky, and lifeless. The mark of Eldrazi. The waters also told of her people, the Merfolk. They were still alive out there, something which Kiora wasn't sure she would return to find. Their existence excited Kiora, for if some of her people yet lived, then perhaps her sister did as well. Kiora's sister, a young merfolk named Tory, was the whole reason she had started her campaign against the Eldrazi. Kiora was fiercely protective of her sister, and would do anything in her power to spare her from these monsters, even if that meant facing against a god or two. She wouldn't know where she'd find them, but She knew wherever she did, she'd be reunited with Tory. As she swam, she sensed them, the Merfolk of Zendikar. But something else was among them, the unsettling presence of false life, the Eldrazi. She found them in the waves, at least 100 Merfolk, but they were being crashed down upon by aquatic Eldrazi. They reminded her of giant kraken, but she knew this was a lie. Just like the lie her people had made up for Ulamog so many years ago. The Merfolk were helpless, with less than a dozen capable warriors left to defend the group. As her heart raced, the great Bident glowed a starry and otherworldly glow. It was a promising sign. The power of the sea surged through Kiora's godly weapon, and finally, she had a weapon that could tip the tides in her favor. The smaller Eldrazi were the first to reach the Merfolk's position, but Kiora wouldn't let them harm a single scale. Using the Bident, she bent the waves and currents to her will, forming a vortex which reached to the ocean floor. The lesser Eldrazi were unable to swim from its suction, leading many to their watery graves. The victory was short, as a much larger Eldrazi, smaller than Ulamog but still giant in its own right, appeared before the frightened Merfolk. This beast would not succumb to the waters as easily, so Kiora relied on her old tricks, the allies of the depths. She used her power to call forth a giant kraken from the dark waters of Zendikar. The octopus struggled with the monster, both losing a number of appendages. Unfortunately for Zendikar, the Eldrazi rarely even notice when they lose a limb. Kiora's octopus, on the other hand, was losing ground. It needed help. Kiora stared at her Bident and her power began to flow through it. Using the Bident, Kiora enchanted the octopus with renewed vigor, surging it with strength. With this newfound energy, the octopus was able to constrict the Eldrazi between its unrelenting tentacles and a large rock which poked just above the water's surface. The Bident continued to feed the octopus with power and it slowly tightened its grasp. It didn't yield till the last of the unnatural life fled from the Eldrazi, leaving it to fall to the ocean floor. By the time the octopus returned to the depths, the nearby shore was already filled with Merfolk. Kiora also went to the shore, but no one bothered to thank her. She didn't mind, for this world had grown her people as hard as the coral they wore on their bodies. But yet one voice echoed from the crowd. It called her name. It was Tory, Kiora's beloved sister. She had lived, as Kiora had expected, but regardless, she was happy to see her safe. They traded stories, just like old times. Kiora's new favorite was of course her victory over a god, a real god. Tory didn't believe her, which caused Kiora to rebuttal with "Cozy take me if I lie," in a joking manner. But Cozy and the other old gods were no longer something to joke about. Kiora received stares as if someone had insulted true gods, but the Merfolk no longer cared about blasphemy. They cared only for their friends and family who had lost their lives in the old god's wake. Many of these Merfolk had seen Cozy, Kozilek in the flesh, even lost loved ones to the Titan. They were wounds reopened whenever someone mentioned their old names, their false names. Tory went on to inform her sister that no one had seen Emrakul or Kozilek for months. All that remained was Ulamog. This was good. Kiora only had to kill one god, not the three like she thought. This fact didn't change much for the others, however. Their plan was still to run and escape from Ulamog's wrath. Kiora wanted to head right towards it. Tory said that she was studying at Seagate when the Eldrazi sacked the city. She and other Merfolk there managed to escape and could swear they saw the Titan itself looming over the city. That's where Kiora needed to go. Tory didn't want to see her sister leave again, especially now and knowing where she was headed. But Kiora, as she had been in her youth, was stuck in her ways. To Kiora, Cozy was her favorite of the three old gods. He proved time and time again that even gods could be made to look like fools. Even if Cozy now was nothing more than a memory, a shadow of a monster, his stories of tricks and the tricksters they inspired gave Kiora the strength to carry on. Kiora talked to the Merfolk, her people. If any others fancy themselves tricksters as she did, let them ride with her and her sea monsters to Seagate to bring the fight to Ula himself. She refused to let her sister come. While she thought it was a crazy idea, she would never let her sister in such danger. Those Merfolk who agreed to join her gathered on the back of a giant serpent, while her sister and the others made their way to safer waters. Kiora was now surrounded by the laughter of tricksters, the sons of Cozy, headed to fight a true monster. And there you have it guys, the story so far for Kiora in the battle for Zendikar. She had reconnected with her sister and her home world. The Bident proves to be an effective weapon even in these unfamiliar waters, and she's gained a small force of fellow Merfolk warriors to help her in her fight against Ulamog. Kiora's story is far from over. I believe she'll eventually find and team up with Gideon at some point, adding her tricksters and sea monsters to his army. We don't know yet how her story will completely unfold in BFC, but I'll be bringing you updates as we get them. But for now, I want to know what you guys think about Kiora's involvement in BFZ. Do you think she'll stand as a capable force against the Eldrazi? Let me know in the comments below. Also, I'm aware of an interesting theory involving the old gods of the Merfolk, and I'll be posting a video later in the week about it. As with all my FNLs, it's time to announce this week's card giveaway. Since it's all about Kiora and the battle for Zendikar, I'm of course giving away her new card from the set, Kiora, Master of the Depths. To enter for your chance to win this card, all you have to do is be a subscriber to this channel and leave a comment on this video. At the end of the week, I'll select a random comment and announce them at the end of next week's FNL video, so make sure you watch it to see if you've won. Moving on, let's announce the winner of last week's FNL giveaway. Last week I went over the story of Garruk Wildspeaker and was giving away a copy of his Flip Planeswalker card, Garruk Relentless / The Veiled Curse. And so the winner of last week's FNL and new owner of this Garruk Relentless card is William Josh McCarthy. Congratulations, and I hope he does well in that Graveyard EDH deck of yours. If you could, please check your messages on YouTube. There you should find a message from me with all the information I need to send you this card. And that does it for this week's FNL guys. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way in supporting future content. You can also support this channel by becoming a patron on Patreon. Along with supporting the channel, you'll also receive cool stuff every month and a chance to win weekly Patreon specific prizes. You can also support me by visiting my sponsor at abugames.com. abugames.com is one of the leading online stores for all things Magic the Gathering. FNL and all my giveaways are brought to you directly by ABU Games, and I really suggest you guys checking them out. As always guys, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.